scholars, welcome back to my channel. I'm Dr. Cindy Fan, and today I have something a little bit different. We're going to do a real talk on all the things I wish I knew before I started my PhD. If you're new here, I completed my PhD last year at the University of Melbourne across different disciplines in epidemiology, neuroscience, pediatrics and public health. And currently I'm working as a postdoc here in the UK at King's College London. So first things first is, what is a PhD? In many countries, a PhD stands for a Doctor of Philosophy. And if you translate that, that actually means love of wisdom, which is so beautiful. I've always loved learning about things in a lot of depth. And so the PhD is literally that. When I first started my PhD, I had no idea what a PhD was. I'm the first generation in my family to go to university, the first in my whole ancestral history to do a PhD, and I grew up in a very low socioeconomic status area, and I was pretty sheltered. I didn't really know what university was or what it meant. And all I knew was that a PhD was the highest degree that you could attain. You get to do some really cool research and contribute to world-class new knowledge. A plus is that you get doctor in front of your name. It is nothing like your bachelor's degree, your honours degree or your master's degree. Instead of learning from existing knowledge, you are basically creating new information, new knowledge to your field. And that is a very easy feat. Knowing what a PhD is and what it entails at your university or in your country is really important, because I'm pretty sure they vary between different departments or schools or unis and countries. For example, in Australia, I knew that it was a 4-year full-time or 6-year part-time to complete a written thesis of up to 100,000 words. And there are two routes to a PhD. There's the conventional thesis, where you write chapters and manuscripts, or a thesis with publication, where you include published work in peer-reviewed journals. I went through the thesis with publications. I had 4 publications, 3 were already published and 1 was submitted. And my thesis was around 88.5 thousand words, around 320 pages. And it was my hardest labour, and I'm really proud of it. Universities kind of expect you to do some teaching, but for me, I was very grateful I didn't have to do any of that. I, however, needed to do some master subjects within my PhD because I changed my discipline. And if you're at University of Melbourne, if you're a PhD student, they allow you to take up master subjects for free. So I would look into that and see whether your university offers something similar. I think a really important one is know your why. I have spoken to so many students, aspiring PhD students, and they don't usually know why. Like, what's the deep-rooted why? Some just think that it's the right path to do after their previous degrees. For me, I knew that I loved science. I knew that I enjoyed research, and I did pretty well for my honours degree, some laboratory work for my research assistant role, and I vastly enjoyed it. So for me, I thought the most appropriate route was doing a PhD, which was not my mistake, but I guess I didn't know any better, except I had done a lot of the groundwork and figured out why in the bigger picture, and which is to help children. And I really enjoy the brain, so children's neurodevelopment and mental health research. Knowing your why is really important because that why has to be true to you, and it will be different for every single person. At the end of the day, your why will be something that will help motivate you, especially on days when you're not really having a good day, or in your final year when your motivation starts to plummet. Your why will still help you get through that finish line. And so holding on to that why is really important. Also because I really love learning. So feeling lost in your PhD is completely normal. If you ever feel stuck, if you're going down a rabbit hole and you're learning new knowledge, and you're reading more and more but you feel more lost, it's probably pretty normal. I could joke around and I say, when you do a PhD, you become a professional rabbit hole navigator. Because the more you learn, the less you feel you know. And that can amplify you feeling very lost in your PhD. I remember feeling very a bit stuck for maybe a year and a half of my PhD. There were so many papers to read, so many methods I could use. I had the direction of my project and really conceptualize it and refine it. And majority of the time I didn't feel like I was up to it, because that's one of the next ones. So here I am just trying to say that if you start your PhD and you are feeling lost, it is a very normal feeling. And I'm hoping as time passes, as you get to know your topic a bit more, as you do more reading and you fill in those little gaps, you will have a light bulb moment, like I did. I had it a year and a half into my PhD at the midway point, and it kind of skyrocketed from there. So a PhD is a 4 to 6 year marathon. You're going to be chugging along every single day, writing, reading, doing data analysis, collecting data every single day, and it's a very long journey. Think of it as a marathon. You will finish it in your own time. And so I wish someone told me to celebrate the small wins along the way. I find that really important. For example, a small win for me would be like, I would meet my writing word count for the day. That's either, I don't know, every day it changes. It would be like 500 words, or on a bad day it would be like 250 words, or something that you know that you can meet as a daily goal. Because the journey is such a long time, it can feel like Groundhog Day, where you're just chugging away at this work and you don't really see the successes or the achievements in the long term. So when you set these small goals along the way, if your paper gets accepted, I would go have an extravagant dinner, or if I receive a compliment from my supervisor, I make sure to write that down somewhere or take a screenshot of it and add it to my little affirmations diary. The next one is never compare yourself to another PhD student. even if you started at the same time. So there are no two PhDs that are the same. Fact. And everyone's progress is very different because it really depends on their field, their topic, whether their PhD is lab-based or not. And someone can achieve 4 papers at the end of their PhD. Some may only achieve 1. And that is both okay. It's easier said than done, but learning to not compare yourself to your friends or peers will really protect your mental health, which comes to the next one. Protect your mental health at all costs. More than 50% of PhD students will most likely undergo a mental health condition, either depression or anxiety. These are based on scientific evidence, and that means advocating for yourself and really having those strong boundaries where you can really separate your PhD from your normal life. Things that, like maintaining your hobbies, making sure you don't neglect your family and friends, all of these things really contribute to your mental health, and your work will also reflect that. Keep a research diary. So I have an iPad. Because I like to handwrite my notes and my minutes. I have an iPad as my digital notebook instead of a handwritten book, but you should figure out what works for you. For me, that's handwriting, but I previously lost one of my hard copy books, so I use my iPad with a pencil to really write down everything. So take a message, write down everything. But writing everything down helps you take that mental load out of your brain. I write everything down. I probably don't store anything in my brain. It makes me sound a bit dumb. Sorry. I write everything down and I don't really rely on my memory, and I save that brain capacity for things that I need to actually remember. There's no worse thing when you leave a meeting and you're like, oh, what did that person say? I also write down all of my supervisors' comments, like positive comments. Like, I call it an affirmations diary, and it really helps on days where you're feeling a bit low. It can really help you brainstorm all the things that you've read, all the theories that you kind of depict, and try to link them in your project. It's really normal. I'm trying to normalize it, but everyone, and I've actually spoken to so many people, whether they're students, professors, academics, professionals, someone or everyone kind of experiences imposter syndrome. And so I'm trying to normalize that if you feel a sense of being out of place or inadequate, it's actually pretty normal. Choose your supervisor well. You probably heard that your supervisor can make or break your PhD. There's some truth to that because your supervisor is meant to advocate for you. They're meant to guide you with your ideas, with your project, with your thesis. They provide feedback on how to improve. So you want to be able to choose your supervisor well. Someone that cares for you, a kind supervisor, someone that responds to your emails. Some of the things you don't really think about. So master your soft skills. So these include organizational skills, communication skills, time management. I think the first and the last ones really help you thrive in your PhD. I would say that I did pretty good in my PhD because I mastered the art of organizing, and I really enjoy planning. And so if you plan well and you stay or you stick to it, you're most likely going to produce pretty good work because you're not spreading yourself too thin, you're not doing anything too last minute. And that way you can also have a better work-life balance as well. Your PhD, it can be really lonely, so I would really underscore keeping your friends, whether they're in academia or outside of academia, and your family. These will help you stay grounded in your PhD, because for me, I didn't know anyone else besides my academic friends that were pursuing a PhD. No one really understands what a PhD is. My family, of course, didn't understand what a PhD was either. And so a lot of my challenges that I felt throughout my PhD, I felt quite alone in my journey, especially during the pandemic. So that's how I made the Scholar Diaries. I just wanted to share my experience and find my community and people that were experiencing similar challenges to myself. And I really did find my school of fan, which I'm so grateful for. Before you start your PhD, I would find your support structure, whether that's family, friends, having a really good mentor that has been through this is pretty important. You can reach out to them whenever you have any challenge. The next one's spicy. So there are a few hard truths about academia that you don't really get exposed to unless you're kind of in the midst of a PhD. So there are a lot of politics in academia, and I didn't know of these until I was actually in my PhD. For example, there are politics involved throughout the whole publication process. Your authors list, your authors' responsibilities, the ordering of the authors. I can go through a whole video on just the hard truths of academia in a subsequent video. I wasn't aware of any of these things before I started my PhD, so I felt I was very naive going into my PhD. Now that I think about it, I don't regret it, but I wish I was more aware, or there was more awareness of what a PhD was and what it entailed, the hardships that people go through, what are the normal things in academia. For example, the hardships that academics have been undergoing for the longest time. There's so many articles out there about ageism, sexism, all these crazy stories. If you really want to do a PhD, I highly recommend it. I think it's really impactful work. You get to help the greater society. You get to do really cool research and contribute to new knowledge, which is one of the main things for me. I get to help a larger population of children that are undergoing neuro and mental health challenges. For me, that is my biggest why. If you want to do a PhD, do it for the right reasons, and I would really reflect on your current situation and your own circumstances. I wasn't really sure what a PhD was, so I kind of naively got into a PhD, a full scholarship. Even though I was on a full scholarship, I was very financially strained. I had to work part-time as a research assistant up to 15 hours, even though the university only allowed me 8 hours, but because of my special consideration, I asked for 15 hours. And it's a lot to juggle because you have to still produce work in your PhD. I had to do it full-time because I was on a full scholarship. I couldn't change it to part-time, and all of this was happening during a pandemic, and I had to support my parents who both lost their jobs. So my situation is a bit different. If you're going to do it, understand all of these things before I dive deep and commit into the PhD. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Thanks, scholars. See you next time.